welcome to class. Our practice is going to be a pose-focused class today, and the pose of the day is bridge pose. Bridge pose is a back bend in which we lift ourselves up away from the ground. So it'll be a lot of preparation, what do we need to do to get the body ready for this pose. So for many of us, we think it's all about when we lift our hips off the ground, and that's a big part of this pose. However, in order to get like the fullest expression of this pose, we also have to focus on our upper back. So we'll be doing a lot of working into the thoracic and that bringing the upper spine into the body, which can really help complete the pose. So if we're just lifting the hips and not getting into the chest, we're really not in that much of a back bend. So we'll work on that. Also another part is shoulder extensions. So when we bring the arms back behind our body, we're extending the shoulders. So for many of us, this is not a position we do often in our everyday lives. Maybe we're scratching our back or something, but we don't often do this. We're more always here, keyboards, whatever, things in front of us. And so these muscles are typically tighter, and these muscles back here are typically weaker. So we'll work on a little bit of shoulder opening in addition to working on that upper back. And then of course, the hip flexors. So because we're often again in this position, yoga is asking us time and time again to put our bodies into positions that are out of the norm so that we can work on these tissues that get stuck in different positions. So we're often stuck here in a crease in our hips rather than flattening that crease out. When we're in bridge pose, that is smooth and we're trying to extend the hips. So we'll work on the hip extension, shoulder extension, thoracic extension, and we'll get the body into this back bending pose. I also like to think about the symbolism or metaphor of the pose. So if we think about what is a bridge, it safely gets us from point A to point B when there is something underneath. There's water or traffic or something that is potentially dangerous. So it's getting us from point A to point B. So we can think of our practice as a bridge that gets us from point A, where we are now, to point B. And oftentimes that's very different how we feel when we start, how we feel at the end of our practice. We can take it a step further in that a bridge unites things, right? So in our practice, we're uniting our mind, our bodies, our breath. And some like to take it a step further. We're uniting, our physical, earthly existence with our divine nature, which is one of the kind of ultimate goals of yoga, is to connect to that higher self, higher purpose, the spirit or the soul, however you want to look at that. And you can, think about this in any way that resonates with you. So we're going to start in some supported postures to begin to open up these areas of the body. So the first one is for that thoracic extension. So we're going to do our supported heart opener using our 2 blocks. Now we're going to have 1 block on the lower setting and 1 block on the higher setting. The first one is going to go under the backs of your shoulder blades, and the second one goes under the back of your head. Those of you who want a maybe deeper sensation are going to turn the block under your shoulder blades up, but make sure the one that's under your head is just a bit higher so you don't feel like you're dropping your neck back, okay? So I'll get you set up, and then I'm going to come up and just do a little reading as we settle into this pose. So we'll come back, and as you do so, you want to catch that first block at the bottom tips of your shoulder blades. So girls, it's right around the strap line. Guys, you got to figure that out. And then the second block goes under the back of your head. So I've got a pony in, so it makes it a little hard to get in the right position. So if you have one, no one's watching, feel free to take that out so you can be more comfortable. I'm just gonna leave it in because it gets in my way when I'm teaching. And then legs, you can stay bent, you could extend the legs, or you could do a bound angle shape. So choose what feels most inviting to your body today in your practice. And then maybe just a little tuck of the shoulder blades towards each other so you feel lifted in your chest. So I'm going to give you a couple moments to get that settled. I'm going to come up. Now, do your best whenever you are in these bridge poses. We're going to do quite a different variety of them. We don't want to turn the head to look at the camera. So do your best to follow my voice, use your, just listen to what I'm saying, rather than trying to constantly look at the camera. So there'll be different times where you'll be able to look at the camera, or look at your screen rather. But when we're in those particular poses, we don't want to be turning the head. Okay, so go ahead, we're going to take a few minutes here. Start to soften into the posture. Really letting the shoulder heads drop so we feel more open and spacious in the collarbones. Let the back of the head really rest deeply onto the block. And begin to focus on your breathing. I'm going to take a few more minutes here. I'm going to share this reading with you. And this passage really spoke to me about this particular pose, although it's not written about this pose. New book that I'm reading called The Practice is the Path by one of my favorite teachers, T.S. Little. I'll be sharing lots of good stuff from this book. So he writes that the spiritual journey requires that when ready, we cast off the armoring that confines us, so that an interior soul self, tender and less constricted, can emerge. The spiritual journey requires that when we are ready, we cast off the armoring. So when we do any kind of back bending and opening into the heart space, we can often feel vulnerable because of this kind of energetic, emotional body armoring that happens when we're under stress, when we're under threat, when we are depressed even. We tend to round, collapse, and close off the front of our bodies. And over time, that builds up to this thickening of the tissues and body armoring. So he says dropping the armor is not easy, for it may have provided needed protection. Oftentimes, it protects us from the ghosts of our own past, from emotional hardship, trauma, and loss. It may provide a kind of refuge, one that we never received from family, school, friends, lovers. Dismantling the armor is a necessary stage in the maturation of a yoga practice. It is tricky, for all too often we identify with our protective gear, given that our shell at one time was necessary to keep us safe. Thus, we may not drop our shell all at once, but rather over days, months, even decades. We may discard our outer shell and then, feeling vulnerable and exposed, don that familiar protection once again. This can happen repeatedly. We remove our cover and we put it on again. It takes time for the supple, open, tender inner self to have the courage and trust to be in the world without having to hide. So to me, that's one of the big aspects of a backbending practice, is loosening this body armor, particularly in the front of our chest. Okay, so we've been there a little while. Notice how you feel. And have an imprint of this sensation of the heart lifting and opening, of the thoracic spine moving inward. So we're going to come out of this one and come into part 2, which is now going to open more into the hip flexors. So as you're ready, if your legs are out, bring them up so feet are flat, and you can press down into your feet, gently come off your blocks, and we'll take the blocks out of the way, and we're going to come back down onto our backs and come into supported bridge. Now for some of us, we can go on that first setting, we can go on the second setting. You can even stack up 2 blocks, especially if you have the skinny ones. So, decide what feels best for you. But do come on your back first before you slide the block in. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to come down and then lift the hips up and put the block under the sacrum. So move back just a little bit. So the sacrum is the bony part, not the fleshy part of your lower back. And you want to be even on the center of that sacrum. And this is supported bridge. Now if this is pretty mild sensation, that's okay because we're going to be working with extending the legs. But if you already know that you definitely need a little bit more sensation, you could tip the block up 1 setting or stack 2 blocks on top of each other. So once you're there, lift up a little bit. So come onto your tiptoes, lift up a little bit and lengthen the flesh of your lower back away. So tailbone away, and that'll help give you a little more traction and length here that we don't feel so crunchy in this lumbar region. Tuck the shoulder blades under a little bit so you feel that lift in the chest. Come to your breath. Feel the feet on the ground. Even feel the imprint of the texture of your mat on your feet. So keeping the tone of this practice very meditative, as I'm calling these particular practices a meditation on a pose. So meditation on a pose means we're focusing more deeply into the nuance of this pose. How to break it down, how to align it, how to get the most out of it for your body. So feel that texture of the mat under your feet. We're going to make sure throughout the poses of bridge today that we don't allow the legs to splay. Okay? When the legs splay, we get more compression in our lower back versus keeping this more neutral. So we're going to try and keep the knees in line with the hips and the feet parallel to each other, not turned in or out. Now, if this is feeling pretty good, we're going to take one leg and start to sneak it out. And you might be able to straighten that leg all the way. You might not. But that's going to iron out, open up this hip flexor of the straight leg. Again, try not to turn your head too much. Have a neutral gaze. Not quite as bad here because we're supported, but when we are actually lifting ourselves up, we would not want to do that. Now, to add a little bit of release, we might want to give a little warmth to our hands by rubbing the palms together. Good friction. And then place the warmth of your hands on the hip flexors. Try to keep that pretty even though this leg's straight. Stay even in the back of your pelvis. So we know from massage that our hands can help relax and soften the tissues underneath. So use the healing power of the warmth of your hands to imagine this tissue softening and releasing. As if the warmth of your hands could melt any tension here in the hips. Okay, let's go ahead and switch. So slide that leg back in, doesn't matter which one you do first, and then other leg out. And once again, let's warm the hands and place them right over the hip flexors and just soften that tissue. Keeping the hip points level, facing up. You might try to sneak that leg out a little bit more. If you start to get crunchy in your back, tip your tailbone up a a little bit. For me, that helps take the crunchiness out. So see if it helps you. Breathing here below your navel as best as you can. So we're trying to get into these hip flexors and psoas muscle. So get the breath nice and deep into the lower belly. One more breath here. And then we'll release. Bring that leg back in. Once again, settle. You might want to redo your tailbone a little bit if you've lost it. You can stay here for the last few moments, or if it feels okay, take both legs out. So that might be pretty deep on your hip flexors and your lower back. Go ahead, tip the tailbone up a little bit if that helps. And then warmth of your hands, if you want to re-warm them, you can. And just soften that tissue in the front of the hips. Shoulders can tuck in a little bit. Direct the breath below your navel center. One more. Remembering that anytime you feel like this is really good, this is really helping me, you can bend your knees. You can always pause the video and stay longer. I'm trying to not let these get too long. I'm challenged to create really short videos because I feel like there's so much we need to do to prepare the body for yoga practice. But I'm trying to keep them a little shorter. So I'm not going to hold them too long, but know that you can. So now let's come down to the low setting. If you're up high, drop that block down. And just kind of notice how the low back feels. And for me, it's just a little cranky as I'm coming out of this pose. We start to feel a little fragile in the tissues when we hold it for a long time. So settle now. If you're on the lowest setting, just stay there for another moment. And then we'll all come off completely. So lift your hips just enough that we can slide that block out and place it off to the side. All right, so widen your feet and windshield wipers side to side, and just feel that rock across the sacrum and the lower back, releasing any residual tension there. Good. All right, so we're going to do a little somatic movement to continue to work in these the hip flexor area. You're going to have feet as wide as your mat. Arms out wide. And then let's take the left leg straight, keeping the right leg bent. And then from here, take this right leg, drop it over to the left. Push off your foot. Lift the hip, which opens that hip flexor, and let your head roll to the right. Press into the right arm, your head, your foot, and then release back to the start. Let's repeat that a few more times, and if it's comfortable and you're familiar with it, you can close your eyes. Rock that knee over, head rolls right, lift the hip, and squeeze the back of the hip. So into your glutes. That's an important piece of this pose as well. Rock, squeeze, press. Back to center, one more time. Push off the foot, rock, squeeze, press. And then back to the center, straighten that leg out. And then let's do the other side. So we're gonna bend the left knee, press off that foot, rock the knee to the right, roll the head to the left, squeeze the back of the hip, and release. Let the head roll to center each time. And as you come into it, press down into the left side. Foot, arm, head, and release. Couple more here. Eyes closed if you're okay with that. feeling each nuance of sensation. Last time here. Good, and then release. Slide that leg back out, have a pause. Good, and then feet flat, knees bent. I'm going to do a couple more different preparations here. So we'll start a few flowing bridges. So flowing bridges are more of a warm-up. We're not holding the pose, we're not even efforting all that much. It's more of a nice flow to warm up our hips, our legs, our arms and shoulders. So as you inhale, you're going to lift the arms, lift the hips at the same time. Stretch through the arms. And then slowly lower back down. Actually, let's grab blocks. I want you to get an imprint of this as well. So one block is going to go between your feet. This is going to help keep us honest so we don't splay. And then the other block between the legs. Okay? And then keep that kind of hugging toward the midline. And here we go. Inhale, lift up. Slight squeeze of the block, and then release. Now as you do this lift, press down, feel the imprint of your feet into your mat. Keep the tailbone lengthening as you reach the arms. You almost want to feel like the tailbone and the arms reach in opposite directions. Let's do 2 more cycles like this. Lift up. Use the backs of your legs and the bottom of your glutes to lift up. So the next time we're going to hold it, and I'm going to talk about that. So inhale, lift up, hold, and be aware of trying to get the work to the lower fiber of your glutes. If it's up high, it's going to more crunchy in your low back, but if it's down toward the hamstring where your kind of butt cheek connects to your leg, that's the spot we want to use more so than up high. Hold it here, one more breath, squeeze your block, lift your tailbone, and then one vertebra at a time. Keep the arms overhead, one vertebra at a time, so we can separate some of that tissue between the vertebra, come down, and the tailbone comes down very last. Good. Okay, let's set those blocks to the side. We'll use them again later. One more thing here on our backs. So feet and legs together now. So normally we don't do bridge with our feet and legs together. We have them hips distance, but you can have a little space between your feet. They don't have to be like a tight rope, but close together. And we're going to feel that imprint of the mat underneath the feet. And we're going to lift the hips just an inch or so. So you should be able to slide your hands underneath. Press down into those feet and tip your tailbone up a little bit. Hold here. Try your best to let your glutes relax. And you might start to feel this in the backs of your legs. That's where I want you to feel it. If you don't, that's okay, but we're targeting more into the legs rather than use the glutes here. Just gotta get used to that feeling of lifting up off the ground. Hold it here, one more breath. Maybe lift the tailbone a little bit more. Lift your hip points. And then slowly again, come back down. Pause for a moment. Let your body neutralize. And then we'll bring those knees into the chest. So when the knees come into the chest, it's pretty much opposite of bridge pose, so it can be a nice counter. So of course we've got the creases in the hips again. When we're in bridge, we have the creases open in the hips. All right, let's roll over to one side, and we'll come on up into a seated posture. Fix the hair, and I'm going to sit sideways so you can see. Working a little bit now into the thoracic extension. So hands on the floor beside you. Have a little bend in the elbows so I'm not locking and hyperextending them. And then pull the shoulder heads back so you feel open in your chest. Feel the imprint of the feet on the ground. Lengthen your tailbone down into the ground, and now start to curl your heart up toward the sky. Press down into your hands and pull the hands apart isometrically. And breathe here, feeling that upper spine move into the back body as if you could offer your heart up higher toward the sky. And have one more breath here. And then slowly release. Come up and come around into crossed legs. Interlace your hands behind your back. Now at first, just let the hands set at the small of your back. Keep the elbows bent and lift your chest. You might wish to sit up here on a pillow or a blanket. I'll grab that to show. Makes it a little more accessible. With the elbows a little bent, have a loose fist with your hands, so we're not like tight like this, we're loose. And try to pull your hands apart, but don't let go. And as you pull them apart, feel how that opens your chest. Maybe you can notice the upper back. Maybe you notice the arm muscles here, and breathe. Now, if it feels okay, lift those hands up a little bit, away from the small of your back. Keep pulling the arms apart, and then if you wish, you could start to fold. Keeping extension through the spine, tuck the chin a little bit, lift those arms up. Now keep finding a little back bend in your chest. Good, and then slowly coming up. And release the arms. Roll the shoulders out a bit. Okay, so we'll come now into all fours for some cat-cows. And we're going to need a block. And you're going to need your blanket for underneath your knees. Because we'll be there for a little bit. So grab the block and place it between the inner thighs like we did earlier. This is to help teach us. Engage the inner thighs, hug toward the midline so that those knees don't pop open in our bridge pose. So hands under shoulders, knees under hips. I'm going to move this back just a little bit. And then focusing on the sensation of the upper spine moving as you do these two postures. So we take an inhale. Exhale, round your spine. Push into the ground with your feet and your hands and lift your abdomen up. Draw the block and your head towards each other. Now as you inhale, move the block back. Keep tone in your belly. Starting to lift your chest and see if you can feel the upper spine move into your body. And then exhale, round. On your own, go ahead and do a few more rounds. Feeling the imprint of the mat under your hands, maybe under the tops of your feet. And really focusing on this upper back area, moving in as you come into that inhale. We're going to take it to a dog in a moment, and I want you to really feel that spine moving in for one more round. One more round. And then from that neutral, come back to neutral, we're going to come into child's pose first. So sink your hips back towards your heels. And if possible, let the arms slide forward. Have a little tuck in your chin so that you feel like the crown of the head lengthens.
press down into your palms. Lift the inner shoulder up a little bit. And then from here, inhale, lift your head up. And as you lift your head up, can you get your upper spine to draw in? Pull back with your hands, pull forward with your chest, and then release. Now do that 2 more times. And as you lift up, can you feel like almost like a Y, a little Y in your back? And toward the center of your spine, those muscles start to contract toward the bottom tips of your shoulder blades. And do that 2 more times on your own. And then after your second round, have a brief pause. If you still have a blanket, you can start to take it out. So we're going to now start to move a little bit. Move into our downward facing dog. So take 1 more breath where you are. And then let's make sure to have blocks at the top edge of your mat. So pull in your blocks if you don't have them. Okay. Back to tabletop pose. Take an inhale. Feel your upper spine melt in a bit, toning the belly. And then tuck your toes, keep that spine in, start to lift up to a down dog. Lift the hip creases, lift your sit bones, push forward and down with your hands. And then let's repeat, knees down, inhale, look forward, slight cow pose. Exhale, keep the spine in as you lift up to your dog. 1 more like this. Next inhale, take your right leg straight up behind you. We're going to bend the knee and open the hip so that opens that hip flexor. Let the left heel drop and squeeze the left hip in toward midline. Keep the left arm firming. Come back through the center and we're going to step through and drop that back knee down, coming into a lunge. Here's where we're going to want to use our blocks to transition. So staying here for a moment, letting the chest lift, and then we'll slowly come up, hands on the side. So lunges are really good for working on the hip extension of the back hip, but it's important to find a neutral pelvis. So lift your hip points up, zipper your low belly up, and draw the tailbone down and even slightly forward. As I go slightly forward, I'm already feeling an ironing out of that back hip flexor. Now hands on the thighs initially to press down to lift your chest, shoulders back. And we're going to inhale, try to keep that tailbone pulling forward as we slide into a lunge. And then let this be very meditative, feeling the imprint of your foot on your mat. And do that a few more times. Moving in this meditative way so we can keep that focus on sensation. We're not bypassing. So if it's comfortable now, put the arms at your side, palms forward so they're externally rotated. And maybe curl your chest up. Good. And then if you want to add again, you can start to, with the palms up, lift the arms up and back. Now if that's too much, stick with any of the other variations. Hands on your thigh, hands at your side. 2 more. Do it 1 more time. This time I'm going to lift those arms again. Whatever variation you wish. And now staying here, pressing into that front foot. Lift your arms, lift your rib cage, stretch it back. And then release. Hands back down to your blocks and step back. Downward facing dog. So get that upper spine in as you lift up. This time, inhale to a plank. Lower all the way down. If you wish, drop your knees. Tops of the feet
flat, roll the shoulder heads back. Pull back with your hands. Press down into the tops of your feet and curl up into a cobra. Now keep pulling hands back, shoulders back, chest forward. Feel the contraction in your back muscles. And then release. Down dog.
Inhale, left leg up, bend your knee, open the hip, and don't let this side body sway out. Keep it firming in. Push into your hands. Squeeze your hips. And then straighten your leg. Step through, coming into your lunge. And then find those blocks again. It just helps you have a steadier transition if you need them. And you don't have to use them. As you are ready, transition. Hands up onto your front thigh. Zipper the low belly, pull the tailbone forward. Helps iron out this back hip crease. Chest stays lifted, inhale, exhale, slide. And as you slide, keep that feeling of the inner thighs hugging in. One more time. And then we'll add in the arms. You can stay with this or release the arms, palms forward. That's external rotation. And if you want, adding in the sweep of the arms, up and back. Let's do 2 more rounds, whichever variation you wish. Stay with a nice slow pace. Hold it now, reach up. You can also keep hands on that thigh. And arms down. Step it back to downward facing dog as you are ready. And just pedal it out for a moment. Inhale, plank pose. Lower all the way down. Stretch back through the tops of the feet. And then place your hands slightly in front of your shoulders. Lift up like you're doing a locust. Lift your shoulders. Aim your tailbone down and see if you can pick those hands off the ground. That's it. And then set them down in front of your shoulders. Push down and lift up into like a higher cobra or sometimes like a seal pose it's called. And then zipper your belly. We're going to roll the elbow creases forward. Lift the chest and feel that contraction in your back. And release. Press back, down dog. Inhale, right leg up. Bend your knee, open your hip. Step forward, warrior 1. Spin your back heel down. We'll start with hands on the hips and straighten both legs a moment. As we straighten both legs, we can really get the back heel more grounded. Firm your back thigh. Lift your kneecap. And then zipper up that low belly, pull the tailbone forward, and then bend into that knee, trying to keep as much of that pelvis lifted as you can. And then from here, bring the arms up. And we're going to go into a cactus shape, bending the elbows. With this cactus shape, try to get the upper spine to move in. Bend a little deeper into your front knee. And if you want, take a little back bend. Take your chest and gaze up toward the ceiling. Good. Hold here. One more breath, elbows wide. And then inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, hands down. Step back, downward facing dog. Inhale, plank pose. Lower down. Inhale, cobra, shoulders back, feet down. Exhale, down.
Lift one leg from the inner thigh, firm that leg, try to firm by the lower glute, and then lift up any amount. Release, hamstring strengthener. Other leg lifted up, firm that leg, and curl up any amount, and release. Down dog.
Inhale, left leg up, bend the knee, open the hip.
Step through warrior one, side two. So the back heel's on a slight angle. We're going to straighten both legs initially. And as you straighten both legs, the back thigh can really root back. Get the heel grounded, lift the belly, pull the tailbone forward, and then bend into that front knee. Inhale the arms up. Pull down into the cactus shape. Try to activate the muscles in the back of your heart. And then you might open into a bit of a back bend. Root into that back heel even more. Send your back thigh back. And then inhale, reach up. Exhale, hands down. Step back. Down dog. Inhale, plank pose. Lower all the way down to the belly again. This time, take your arms behind you, palms forward. So you're going to have the palm of your hand on the ground. Zipper your legs together. Pull the tailbone towards your heels. Reach your fingers towards your heels. And then tuck your chin down. Inhale, lift up, head, chest, shoulders. Squeeze the legs together. Anchor the tailbone down. Maybe float the arms up. Activate the upper spine muscles. And release. Stack your hands, wiggle your hips. Take a breath. All right, downward facing dog. Almost done with the standing work. Inhale, right leg up. Step through warrior one. Spin the back heel down. Reach the arms up. Pull down one cactus shape. Inhale, reach up. Bring your hands behind you. Interlace the hands. Small of the back like we did before. Shoulders back. You can stay here or start to come forward. Belly on the thigh. You might feel stretch those arms back. Or you can also dip the head inside the leg. But now don't let this hip go way out. Keep it in as you fold. Press down into the legs, the feet. Feel the imprint of your mat. Let those arms come up higher if you can. And then release. Back to your warrior one. Hands down, step back, down dog. We're going to go right to side two. Inhale, left leg, step through. Spin that back heel down, rise up, warrior one. Very meditative, pull down, open. Inhale, reach up. Interlace your hands behind your back. Open the chest, you can stay here, or as you exhale, belly to thigh, or shoulder inside the knee. And keep the hip pulling back, strong and steady in the legs. Extend through your spine, lift the shoulder heads, free up your neck. And then rooting into the legs. Inhale, come up. Exhale, down. Step back, down dog. Inhale, plank pose. And we're going to lower all the way down to the belly. Interlace your hands behind your back now, just like we just did. Now if that's too much, use a belt. So let me show it with a belt. Oh, I thought I had it. There we go. So if we use a belt, it's going to be a little more gentle on the shoulders and the elbows. So feel free, if it's very easy for you to catch your hands, stay with that. But I'm going to show with the belt as a modification. So we're going to hold the belt with palms down, because that's going to open the shoulders. If I flip my palms, my shoulder heads drop down. So palms face the ground, pull on the strap, try to bend the elbows a little bit, and lift the legs, lift the chest, squeeze the legs together, tuck your chin. One more breath. And release. Stack your hands up. Wiggle your hips out. This time, let's windshield wiper. Side to side. And press back, child's pose. So when you're ready, if you have that strap, take it out of the way. One more breath. All right, so coming up, we're going to transition to doing a few different variations of bridge pose now. Starting out with another supported version, and then we'll gradually make it into the active versions. So I'm going to ask you to have some blankets here if you have them. And I'm going to put 2 blankets down. There's a space for my head behind that. If you don't have yoga blankets, regular blankets from your bed are going to be too slippery. So instead, I would say take your mat and fold it up 3 or 4 times so you have a little bit of a lift in your shoulders. And then we're going to need a strap and we're going to need our blocks. So we're going to put 2 blocks, one on either side of your sacrum. Now for some of us, coming up this high is too much, so you can lower the blocks down, okay? And we're going to have that strap nearby, so we're going to put that over the feet. Just to help us get a feeling of a nice lifted bridge, having the props is going to give us that experience, and we'll try to recreate it without the props, okay? So head comes off of the blankets. The shoulders are still up, and I have maybe 3 inches here from my shoulder to the top of the blanket, because when I lift up, my shoulders are going to shift. And I don't want the shoulders to shift so much that they come off of the blankets. So have that 3 inches here, and then let's grab those blocks. And start on middle setting, lift up, and put 1 block on either side of your sacrum. And this just kind of also helps even things out back there. We often get cranky SI joints. This can be helpful. Get a sense of coming onto your tiptoes and reaching your tailbone towards your knees. And this might be it. Or if that feels pretty mild and you think you can get a little higher in your hip creases here, you're going to try. So come up on those tippy toes and lift those blocks up all the way and come down. So now I've got a really big lift here, flattening out those hip creases. You're going to rotate your palms open so your chest feels really lifted. Tucking those shoulder blades in a little bit. Hopefully your strap is within reach. You're going to now take the strap around your ankles. So I like to kind of lift one leg up and then it'll drop down over my ankles. And then get a good grip on the strap as close to your feet as you can. Feel the imprint of the mat under your feet. Try not to turn your head too much, but rotate your palms to face up.
toward the ceiling, and that'll really rotate your arms into position. Maybe you can hold closer to your feet. And now pull on that strap. Pull it towards you and slightly apart. Keep the feet pressing down and reach your heart toward the sky. There should be a little curve in your neck, no flattening. Press the head gently down, press the shoulder heads gently down, and lift in your chest. Feel this expansion. One more breath. And now softly let go. And you can kick that strap out of the way. We're going to stay on the blocks. This time come into robot arms. So robot arms, my palms face each other. Tuck in again. Lift the chest. Press into the elbows. And then pick the right knee up and into your chest. And extend it up. Reach through your leg. Reach through your heel. Press into the elbows. Lift your chest. And then let's switch. Bring that foot down. Knee in. And press up. Keep lifting into your chest. And then release. Both feet down. And now we're going to come down, but a little bit at a time. So lift your hips. Drop the blocks a level if you're all the way up. If you're on middle, you could go low. So we don't want to shock that low back into coming out so quickly. And now come down all the way if you're up still. If you're on the lowest setting now, you can stay there. And then we'll take the block all the way out. And know that if you are fatigued, I'm going to roll off and take my blankets off. Know that if you are fatigued, you can stick with the supported version of bridge and just keep using 1 or 2 blocks under your sacrum. Otherwise, we're going to try now to be more active in this pose. So maybe a more fuller expression of the pose. We don't need the props anymore, so we're going to just try it without the props. And again, we'll try a few variations. So we'll come down, come into your robot arms. You want to make sure your feet are pretty close to you, but not so much that it bothers your knees or your low back. Robot arms, tuck the shoulder blades in a little bit, and lift that chest initially. So getting into that upper spine right away. Elbows root down, chest lifts, and now lift your hips up 1 inch. You should be able to slide your hands underneath you. Dig into the elbows, walk the shoulders in again. Chest lifts even higher. Now lift the hips a little higher again. Try not to drop those knees open, no splaying of the knees. Walk the shoulders in again, lifting that chest. Good, now fullest expression. Keep some tone in the belly, but lift those hips nice and high. Lengthen the tailbone. Tip the tailbone upward. Work on the lower fibers of your glutes and hold here. Making sure you're not turning your head. Curving your neck, no flattening. Good. And now undo the shoulders. Come down. 1 vertebra at a time. Keep the tailbone up. Like a string of pearls, lay those vertebrae down away from each other. So we're trying to create some space. And then pause. Next round, we're going to hold the edges of your mat with the arms. And we're going to be using that as a little leverage to open the chest more. And what we're going to do is take a handful of your mat and try to flip your palm so that the knuckles go underneath your mat and that opens here into the collarbone, gets my shoulder more flush against the ground. Okay? So, holding the edges of the mat with both hands. Feel the imprint of the mat in your feet. Lift the hips 1 inch. Roll the knuckles underneath your mat. Feel those shoulder blades draw towards each other. Walk them in. Lift up a little higher. Pull on the mat. Lift the hips all the way up. Keep pulling on the mat. Rock the shoulders under. Lift those hips as high as you can without splaying the knees. Engage the lower fibers of your glutes. And then relax your arms, undo the shoulders, come down 1 vertebra at a time. Tailbone last, and then settle and pause. We've got another variation now in which we clasp the hands underneath. Now, if the clasping was hard in any of the other poses, you can keep holding your mat. You can use a strap underneath you. But otherwise, we're going to lift those hips up 1 inch, walk the shoulders under, clasp the hands. Okay, and then try not to lock out your elbows, tone the belly, walk the shoulders under again. Lift up as high as you can. Try to pull your palms apart without letting go to open your chest. Walk the shoulder blades in again. Press down into whatever is on the ground. Lift your tailbone. 1 more breath. Feel the imprint of the mat in your whole foot. And then undo. Walk those shoulders out. Come down. And settle. Pause here. And let's let the knees drop apart for a moment. We're going to do a version now with the knees apart. Come into your robot arms. Dig the elbows in, walk the shoulder blades in, press the feet together. And then lift up. Bridge pose with bound ankle. Press your feet together, squeeze your outer hips, walk the shoulder blades in, lift higher. 1 more breath. And then undo the shoulders, come down slowly, slowly, slowly. Let those knees drop open. And now let's bring the feet flat. Arms wide, windshield wipers to release any residual tension in your lower back. Let's let the head roll in the same direction as the knees so that we get a very soothing sensation in the spine, the neck, the lower back. Go slow motion, bringing that nervous system back down. Back bends are enlivening for our system, stimulating for our central nervous system, so they can energize us, but sometimes they can overstimulate if we're already a little bit anxious or amped up. So I want to bring the system back to a more neutral state by moving slowly and mindfully. Bring those knees back up. Feet are as wide as the mat. Let the knees drop together. Then we're going to take the arms, cross one over the other, and drape them over the body like you're giving yourself a hug. Pull the shoulder blades apart. We did a lot of them squeezing together, so now let them broaden and soften. Relax your belly, relax your inner thighs, relax your low back. Switch your arms, opposite arm on the top.
And then release your arms. Separate your knees. Walk the feet into hips distance. We're going to take a twist. Take your right leg over your left leg. Press into your left foot. Shift the hips offset to the right. And drop your knees to the left. Now if this is too much, you can stack your knees. You can add prop in between or below your knees. If it feels good, keep the intertwine because it helps get a deeper stretch through that lower back, outer hip. You might even place your hand for a little extra weight. And your head could be neutral or turned to the side. See if you could even your shoulder blades out by pulling the left shoulder blade to the left. And that also increases the sensation of stretching the tissue in my lower back when I do that. If this arm is uncomfortable or floating, let it rest on your rib cage or your hip. Otherwise, let that arm be out to a T. Those of you in cross legs, see if you could bring that foot a little more flat, the top foot. Adjust so you can do that. And press the leg away from you a bit as you let your right shoulder drop. Press the bottom leg down. Press the ankle and leg into each other. And then release. So it gets a little bit more into my outer leg. I'm going to stack the legs up. Slide the top leg back. And then slide the bottom leg back. Adjust your body so you're even on your mat again. And let's do the other side. Cross left leg over. Offset your hips. Drop them over to the right. And hold here for a bit. Maybe pull that right shoulder blade to the right a little bit. Directing the breath wherever you might feel some restriction of the tissue. And then we're going to see, those of you who want to go to this next phase, bring that foot flat, press the knee away. Press the bottom leg down and resist your ankle and your leg into each other. It gets a little bit more into the outer leg, maybe even into the shin area. And then release, stack the legs up, bring the top leg back, bring the bottom leg back, and even yourself out. Press in your feet and start to get a little jiggle. So jiggle your body, and this just helps traction the lower back after that, all that bridging. Maybe go a little faster if it feels good. We're also loosening up the organ body, letting it kind of get a little jostled around in there. Slowly come to a stop. Bring those knees back into your chest. So now we're countering all the back bending with a flexion of the body. Bringing the knees in is flexion. And then see if you can clasp your hands around your knees. Inhale. Exhale, lift up, hug in. Your upper body down and then hold the backs of your knees, widen the knees, let the feet flop. You can rock a little bit here. You can also come into a full happy baby, feet up into the air, holding ankles, holding feet. Keeping the tailbone heavy, shoulders heavy, and see if you can curve into your low back a little bit, rock side to side. Hug in one more time. Coming into Shavasana, let the feet come down.
slide them out one at a time. And if you still feel a little tender in your low back, give a little shimmies, like shimmy back and forth, bounce your legs up so you can loosen up. And you could put a rolled blanket under your knees, under your head, so that you feel supported in your Shavasana. I'm going to be coming out, so I can continue to guide you, but stay there and just make any last minute adjustments so you feel like you can deeply relax. As you settle, take a few rounds of breath. And notice where you are now, compared to where you were at the beginning of your practice. Has anything changed or shifted in your mind, body, spirit complex? Sometimes we move from an overactive mind to a calmer mind, or from chaos to calm, from anxiety to steadiness, from tension to softness. So just notice what changes have taken place for you as you went from point A to point B. With every exhale, land a little more here in this moment. Continue to soften and deeply rest. As you stay in Shavasana, I'll share a little poem with you that I thought went well with what we did today. So this is called Waiting by Lisa Lowitz. You keep waiting for something to happen. That thing that lifts you out of yourself, catapults you into doing all the things you've put off, the great things you're meant to do in your life, but somehow never quite get to. You keep waiting for planets to shift, the new moon to bring news, the universe to align, something to give. Meanwhile, the piles of paper, the laundry, the dishes, the job, it all stacks up, while you keep hoping for some miracle to blast down upon you, scattering the piles to the winds. Sometimes you lie in bed terrified of your life. Sometimes you laugh at the privilege of waking. But all the while, life goes on its messy way, and then you turn 40 or 50 or 60, and you find signs of this in the animal kingdom, realizing you are not alone. Like when a snake sheds its skin, its eyes glazed over, it slinks under a rock, not wanting to be touched. Or when the caterpillar turns into a butterfly, when the bird taps its beak hungrily against the egg because the thing is too small, and it needs to break out. And midlife walks you into that wisdom, that this is what transformation looks like, the mess of it, the tapping at the walls of your life, the yearning and writhing and pushing until one day you emerge from the wreck, embracing both the immense dawn and the dusk of the body, glistening, beautiful, just as you are. So for me, that really echoes the passage from the beginning of practice about that tender part of the self that is revealed as we practice over days, weeks, months, decades.
in order to release that body armor that holds us back, that keeps us safe but also keeps us limited. If you wish to stay longer in Shavasana, you're welcome to pause the video or just let it play out and stay where you are. If your time is limited and you wish to conclude, you can start to gently reawaken, moving fingers, toes, deepening breath. Gradually roll over to one side for a pause. Making sure we have a slow transition to seated so we don't jar the system out of all that good progress. Taking your time to arrive seated. And let's turn palms up if that feels safe for you. Sometimes we feel a little more protected with palms down, but palms up, a little more receptive, a little more tender. Lifting into the heart. Letting the face be soft, shoulders soft. Breathing into that tender space in the heart that you just revealed and opened in this practice. Take a few more cycles of breath. Together in front of the heart space, thumbs at the base of your sternum. Take a big inhale to lift the heart and exhale, bow inward. Connecting mind, body, spirit, head, heart, hands. Our practice, our breath, a bridge from our earthly self to this divine, wise inner teacher. Thank you for joining me today. Namaste. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time.